At dawn on July 1st, 1945, 47 Allied divisions opened fire on the Red Army, and the Second World War refused to end. Just weeks earlier, on May 8, Germany had surrendered unconditionally, and the crowds in London and New York believed the fighting in Europe was over. But behind the celebrations, Winston Churchill was staring at maps of Poland with growing dread, convinced that one totalitarian menace had merely been exchanged for another. In this alternate timeline exploration, we examine what could have happened and why the real history unfolded differently. The plan at the center of this story was real. Alarmed by Soviet conduct in Poland and the fate of the promises made at Yalta, Churchill ordered the British Joint Planning Staff to study something almost unspeakable, a surprise attack on the Soviet Union by the Western Allies. The study was codenamed Operation Unthinkable, and it was delivered on May 22, 1945, with a notional attack date of July 1. Its conclusions were grim. The Red Army held roughly 3-to-1 superiority in land forces across Europe. Total victory, the planners wrote, was unattainable. The plan proposed committing 47 Anglo-American divisions and re-equipping some 100,000 German soldiers, the army they had just defeated, to fight alongside them. Field Marshal Alan Brooke, chief of the Imperial General Staff, confided to his diary that the whole idea was fantastic and its chances of success impossible. In our history, the plan went into a drawer. But in this timeline, something happened in June 1945 that no planner had accounted for, a decision that would not be fully understood for decades, and that would change everything. History breaks not on a battlefield, but in a cabinet room. In actual history, Britain held its general election on July 5, 1945, and Labour's landslide swept Churchill from power in the middle of the Potsdam Conference. In this timeline, that election never happens. Citing the unresolved crisis in Europe and invoking emergency powers held over from the war, Churchill postpones the vote indefinitely. Parliament protests. The press protests. Churchill does not move. He then turns to Washington. Harry Truman has been president for less than 3 months, thrust into office by Franklin Roosevelt's death on April 12. He is inexperienced in foreign affairs, surrounded by advisors who distrust Moscow, and shaken by Soviet behavior in Poland. Churchill works on him relentlessly, arguing that Stalin's broken pledges prove negotiation is finished, and that once American demobilization gathers speed, once the divisions sail for the Pacific and the invasion of Japan, the West will never again have the strength to act. Truman wavers. Then he assents. Brooke submits his objection in writing, predicting catastrophe. He is overruled. The attack is set for the plan's own notional date, July 4. The assault begins in the gray half-light along the demarcation line running through the heart of occupied Germany. 47 Allied divisions surge east toward Dresden and the distant Oder, supported by the full weight of Western strategic air power, the one arm in which the Allies hold clear superiority. On the flanks march formations that make even hardened Allied soldiers uneasy, hastily rearmed Wehrmacht units, men who 8 weeks earlier had been prisoners of war, now issued rifles and pointed at the army that broke them. Surprise is real, and for a moment it works. Soviet forward positions are overrun. In places the advance covers 60 miles. But the Red Army of 1945 is not the Army of 1941. Its frontline formations trade space in good order, falling back through prepared positions exactly as the London planners had feared they would. There is no collapse, no rout, no political disintegration behind Soviet lines. Stalin reads the attack as final proof of capitalist encirclement, the confirmation of every suspicion he has ever held, and orders the Red Army to answer not with defense, but with a general offensive. The consequences of that order would prove catastrophic for the men moving east. But to understand why, we need to look at what was waiting for them. Marshal Georgy Zhukov commands Soviet forces in Germany from Berlin, and he has spent 4 years learning how to destroy armies. Behind the screen of retreating frontline units, he and Marshal Ivan Konev assemble the counterblow, converging offensives backed by more than 11,000 tanks, massed artillery on a scale no Western army has ever faced, and infantry reserves the Allies simply cannot match. In mid-July, the hammer falls near Leipzig, where the Allied center has advanced farthest and stretched thinnest. The overextended spearheads are cut off, encircled, and ground down. Rearmed German units on the flanks, distrusted by their new allies and hated by their old enemies, break first. Within 2 weeks, the entire front is moving west. Allied air power punishes the Soviet columns by day, and it is the only thing slowing them. It is not enough to stop them. In London, Brooke watches the war he predicted would fail unfold precisely as he wrote it would. The question in Allied headquarters is no longer whether they can reach the Oder. It is whether they can hold the Rhine. In Bavaria, the collapse has a single exception. General George Patton, who never trusted Soviet intentions and privately welcomed the confrontation, now finds himself commanding the only functioning defense the Western Allies possess. His Third Army fights a sequence of mobile delaying actions along the main river and through the Franconian hills, striking Konev's southern pincer, withdrawing before encirclement, striking again. The cost is severe. Divisions that expected to be sailing home are bled white in towns whose names never appear in any history of the war they thought they had won. But the pincer aimed at the American rear is blunted, and every day Patton buys matters more than anyone in Europe yet understands. Because on July 16th in the New Mexico desert at Alamogordo, a light brighter than the sun rises over the Trinity test site. The plutonium device works. Truman now holds the one weapon the Joint Planning Staff never counted on, and only he knows how few of them exist. The war is being lost at the front, and it is being lost faster at home. In Britain, word spreads that the nation is fighting beside rearmed Germans against the ally whose soldiers died in the millions to break Hitler. Dockworkers strike. Members of Parliament from both parties demand the election. Churchill cancelled, and the resignation he refuses to offer. Among troops promised demobilization, discipline frays into open mutiny. In America, the fury is colder and deeper. Casualty lists are arriving from a war Congress never declared, against an enemy that 8 weeks earlier had been a friend. And across the Pacific, Japan, unbroken, unbombed by the weapon meant for it, watches its enemies tear at each other and fights on. Stalin's Yalta pledge to enter the war against Japan is dead, and Tokyo knows it. Churchill's government survives on emergency powers and momentum, nothing more. And then, with Soviet spearheads probing toward the Rhine, came the moment that would define everything that followed. Truman faces the decision no president has faced before or since. The Rhine line is cracking. The armies of the West cannot stop the Red Army with conventional force, and everyone from Brooke to the newest staff officer knows it. The bomb is untested in war, and only 2 deliverable weapons exist. Truman refuses to burn cities filled with civilians of a country America never chose to fight. Instead, he authorizes atomic strikes on Soviet supply concentrations and rail junctions east of the Oder, the logistical spine of Zhukov's offensive. In early August, the entire American atomic arsenal is expended in 2 blinding flashes over eastern Germany and western Poland. The destruction is unlike anything in the history of war. Tens of thousands of soldiers die in an instant. Fuel, ammunition, and rolling stock vanish. The Soviet offensive staggers. It does not stop. 2 bombs against a dispersed army of millions, an army built through 4 years of annihilation to absorb catastrophic losses and keep moving, cannot decide a campaign. Stalin does not sue for peace. He tells his marshals the capitalists have shown their true face and that there is no longer any peace to negotiate. By autumn, the front congeals along the Rhine. The Soviets, their supply lines mauled and stretched across a ruined Germany, are too extended to force the river. The Allies, their armies gutted and their peoples in revolt, are too weak to advance. New atomic bombs are months away, and both sides know the next one is coming. Europe, liberated in May, is a battlefield again by July and a wasteland by winter. Its cities shattered twice in 1 year. Its peoples starving between 2 armies that each claim to be saving them. In Asia, Japan fights on unopposed, granted a reprieve purchased with European blood. There is no surrender ceremony in this timeline, no victory parade, no homecoming. The documents signed in May 1945 did not end the Second World War. They simply marked the moment it changed enemies. In our history, the plan stayed in the drawer because Brooks' arithmetic was heeded, because the election went forward, because even Churchill, for all his fears, understood the difference between a contingency and a choice. Operation Unthinkable remained unthinkable. The most consequential decision of 1945 may have been the one that was never made.